So bring it back into the organisation a bit more then. How is that changing the role of the technology team? It sounds like it is developing into becoming the workshop of ideas to create new business issues, to look at ways to solve business problems. Is that happening, or is that still some way to go? Innovation's a much overused word at the moment, but are you finding you and your teams are in a better place to help drive different ways of running the organization?
So personally, I think it's happening, and we have a long way to go. And I think we're starting to realize as an organization that if we're really going to take advantage of the opportunities that the future will bring for us, we need to sit at the same table as the business. So there's no longer IT or technology and there's a business unit. We have to sit together. And that's where things like design thinking, co-creation, and all of those approaches come into play as well. We are part of that organization. We need to be tight at the hip with them. And that is one of the biggest challenges we have now as we continue our journey. It is one of the areas of focus. We're trying very, very hard, but we're finding it very difficult. We're making little steps. And that's really important, that you're always making little steps. So we're not trying to solve for everything here. We're trying to solve for little steps that we see progress that we can then use to take the rest of the business along with us.
I think I always say, we have said there are no IT projects or any business projects, but I think, Mark, you're right that actually the role of the CIO, CTO, CDO, whatever hybrid we are, actually is more central. And there is much more focus and understanding amongst executives and non-executives. So I'm on a board, non-exec on a board of a bank, and financial services is, clearly, going through business sort of transformation, rise of digital challenges. You could look across all sectors and you'll find that. So I think my personal feeling is that there's more pull. Sort of in the past, I've been lucky to work with visionary leaders who really got it. I think these days, almost every company has on its agenda, what is our digital strategy? How can startups, steal our breakfast and lunch? What is our defense? People are asking, data. Okay, I've heard it's a new oil. What on earth does that mean? And so I think our job is to unpack that. And I think we have a critical role in talking to our colleagues about, what all of this really means. What are the real opportunities for our existing business with the advantages we have of, in our case, 202 years, but actually how is digital technology going to change us? How do we develop new services from our old products and so forth? So I think, it's sort of more challenging, but it's a kind of more challenging in a good way, because I think that opens more doors for us.
Yeah, so when I think of the challenges going forward, and I think I'll always bring it down to my context, which is probably a little bit different to a retail or organizations such as BA or John Lewis. We have two challenges as we think delivering our strategy, two things that we're focused on. One is around customer service. It's really important for us. How do we improve customer service? And the other challenge we have is how do we do that from a position of greater efficiency? That's the ambition that I guess applies to all of us. And of course, traditionally we'll have the business trying to work and solve that problem there in the business silo, and we'll have IT in the IT silo working out how do we take some cost out of running the infrastructure or maintaining the infrastructure. None of those things are going to shift the dial. If you really want to shift the dial, you need to come together in one team, because the way you've done things in the past isn't how you're going to do them in the future, and you need to reimagine that future, and you need to work out how technology can support you through that journey. And that's the challenge that we face across the department.
And sort of building on that, what I found was that each part of a business, so we're about sort of applying science in different areas in innovative ways, whether it's sort of catalysts or components of drugs or new battery materials. So they're very, very diverse areas. But everybody was starting to experiment, try digital things. So several people were looking at digital twins, or several people were looking at applying AI, to production lines. So what we did was get people from across the business together and say, look, we need to we need to work out and understand what a digital twin will mean for us, what the opportunities are. We need to really think hard about how we can apply advanced analytics. Let's decide across the business where we're going to have a real go at this. We'll pump prime these. And on behalf of the rest of us, you in Clean Air, Macedonia, you try that analytics and bring that back to us, and so on and so forth. So that's worked really well, because I think everybody's seen the value of that and the learnings and the ability to sort of share. And it's stopped us dissipating the effort, because we've got lots of vendors trying to sell us all the answers to this. It really focuses it, and actually it's better for the vendors that they're actually dealing with coherent, and if it works, then we can roll it out across the whole company.
And do you find that your technology teams are in a better place now, that they are approached and come to for ideas to spawn developments? I'm sure Shadow IT still exists, but your technologists are trusted partners, that they are seen as part of the way to build a new idea.
Well, just to build on, I think the IT skill sets are changing. There's still people who want to be a project manager forever, or a business analyst forever, or a developer. But I think the newest breed of people are, it's an old expression, the T-shaped people or pie-shaped people, sort of more couple of good skills, but actually pretty generic across others. So they're good at talking and understanding business concepts, and they were born digital, so they know how to run apps, etc. But they can challenge and bring in ideas, but they've still got one or two or three good solid mindsets that they can develop on, and maybe chop and change, and maybe stay in your company 2 years and naturally cycle on, have a portfolio career rather than 20 years in one company. So I think that will force change by definition.
And we have more demand than we could afford, or indeed the organisation could manage in terms of overall change. So I guess in some ways it's a quality problem, but I think it's really important to focus investment on the things that will really make a difference. I think we've all said no IT projects, only business projects. So what's really going to move the dial? And I think I see my role as orchestrating a lot of that, and very much working with the business in terms of what's going to pay back, where's the real benefits. And what I try and do is produce IT strategy paper for the exec and the board, which enables them to take informed decisions. It's not IT's role to place those investments, but I think it is definitely our role to have a view and to, if you like, and shape a really quality discussion about where is the best place to go with these.
We talked a lot about kind of business and IT working more closely together. I'm seeing a trend for more business-led digital transformation.
Yes.
Where as CIOs and technology leaders, we're still expected to be responsible for all the infrastructure and all the technology that exists in our organisation, yet we're not always sponsoring or involved in some of the projects. So one of the things that's really quite interesting for me at the moment is, how do you discover those teams or those technologies like digital twins, or perhaps someone who's working on a distributed ledger project, or someone else is working on Internet of Things? How do you discover those things? How do you get visibility of those things when they're not actually being kicked off by the IT organisations? That for me is a really interesting problem that we're looking at.
That role of the CIO, CTO as the broker in many ways.
Yeah, but also being able to kind of get visibility and see what's going on in their organisation from a project perspective or from a runtime perspective when those projects are perhaps spun up in the cloud or someone's built some machine learning model, but who's checked that for risks or, who's checked it for bias or whatever? Ultimately, someone's going to come and breathing down my neck for that, but I didn't spin it up. So how do I get visibility of those things happening?
Yes, and for us, how do you do that with the least friction, without really adding more governance on more governance? That's the challenge that we have. So for me, one of the biggest challenges we have across the organization is that how do we prioritize? How do we know that in a specific project is actually adding any value at all? Because as you can imagine, we've got a lot of projects across the enterprise, and we don't want to be delivering projects anymore. What we want to be doing is creating products and services. And so how do we create the forums, the mechanics to actually see through those products and say, actually, that's things you're doing that's absolutely zero value to the rest of the organization. We can actually deprioritize that and focus the resources on the things that will really add the value. And that's what we're struggling with a little bit. It's not easy to change that mindset, but it's if you recognize it as the first instance, then you can actually start to do something about it. So
I mean, this is one of the challenges of having better informed colleagues and customers, isn't it? So the chief marketing officer is going to know all about social media and digital there. And in fact, what one of my previous colleagues said, Paul, our jobs are very similar. The only difference is you guys have bad haircuts and we have very smart ones. But which I think he meant in a very nice way. But the so I think it's the tension we've all got to manage, isn't it? Between, on the one hand, we're responsible for the security of the organisation, for its cost base, those things. At the other hand, we want to allow the right amount of innovation. So I think you've got to balance that control, and there are some red lines you've got to have.
I mean, it might be useful, but in my third or second previous company in Yotel, because there were only 10 people in the company when I joined, I was VP IT and VP Digital. So basically I was an IT director with sales targets. So I would say to IT people, take a stint in the business and realize what it's like, to be responsible for delivering that revenue rather than just selecting great products and delivering them, because that's the sharp end. If you don't do that, you get out of business quickly. And that's where you really get to see this is why these decisions are being made to close down this and open certain countries. It's hardcore business decisions, and the IT stuff is great, but if the business isn't working, you're not aligned to that, then you're all wasting your time.
Well, and vice versa, I guess.
And vice versa,
I wish we could get more movement between this thing called so-called business thing, and IT.
Actually, the business is becoming very technically enabled.
Absolutely.
And therefore needs to have visibility of the constraints or the opportunities that the organisation has. The realities, absolutely.
And that's a brilliant point. Do you believe then, as we see cross-functional teams, as we see marketing directors have their own IT operations, finance directors have their own operations, do you see that transparency, that dashboard view that we touched on earlier in the conversation, becoming actually very democratic, and everyone in the organisation can see the technology performance and how things are going? How would you feel about that?
Keeping everyone honest.
I think with big data and dashboards, there's no hiding. The data is there. Now that is the certified qualified view of revenue today, yesterday, VOI, etc. And you can dig into that to find out which people, which companies, which systems didn't deliver. So there's no hiding anymore. Yeah. We all have to raise our game together.
But I think one of the things we're looking at is citizen data scientists. So, we can get the data into a data lake. You can use the tools of any of the, the usual suspects in terms of whichever cloud you're in. But, for me, it's absolutely imperative that my smart and technology-enabled marketing or science colleagues can't muck up the data, let alone export it where it shouldn't go. So, you've got to have those controls, and I think it's sort of essential that it's that freedom within the framework, and a modern enterprise that's operating in GDPR world, is operating in a financial service regulatory world. You just have to have those controls. They are not optional. So you've got to explain why and then allow it within those limits.
Yes. So one of the challenges for us is how do we create transparency across the business, to your point, and how do we do that in a safe, secure way where we comply with all of the requirements that we have, whether it's GDPR or any other regulation that we have to meet, and that's what we're there to do, to manage those healthy tensions. But that's no excuse for not being transparent, and I think now we have to be very transparent with technology.